Hello, hello.
You might put a towel or a thin bit of cloth over top to reduce the noise you get when you pop your pee sounds. When you pop.
Bam. All right. Okay, we can hear me. Let's get rid of that echo. Okay, this is crazy. All right. Let's make it unprivate now. All right. Sorry to anyone that's been waiting. Let's see. Where'd that music go? I'll wait a few seconds. Should transfer here. This one's actually a bit distracting. Okay, should be there now. across the stream. Alright, I'm still here. No worries. How's the volume with the background music? It is hard to listen to myself. Alright, we're gonna give this a try and then see how it goes. Alright. Just gotta figure out how to mute myself so I don't have to listen to myself while I'm reading. Then we'll get started. All right, can y'all still hear me? We'll see, let's check over here. Nope, doesn't sound like it. Okay, I'm going to turn that music down a little bit more so I can get it perfect, so it's not distracting. We'll try around here, 24.5. All right, I think that's good. I'm going to get started now. All right, hello and welcome everybody. I hope you've been having a blessed Pascha weekend, and today is Holy Saturday. So that means this was the time when Christ was conquering hell, and he's about to be resurrected in his new glorified body. All right, here we go. Just did one more announcement there. All right, so this is going to be a lot like the last stream. I'm just going to read through as far as I can until I start getting worn down. Last time I went a little too far. I did want to finish. This time, this whole document here, the PDF, has 129 pages, so that's a lot of content. We're going to get through. We'll try to do finish, just one step, not pause in between steps. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. All right. The Ladder of Divine Ascent by Saint John Climacus. Saint John Climacus. All right. An ascetic treatise by Abba John, abbot of the monks of Mount Sinai, sent by him to Abba John, abbot of Rythu, at whose request it was written. Our God and King is good. Step 1, on renunciation of the world. Number 1. Our God and King is good, ultra good, and all good. It is best to begin with God in writing to the servants of God. Of the rational beings created by him and honored with the dignity of free will, some are his friends, others are his true servants, some are worthless, some are completely estranged from God, and others, though feeble creatures, are equally his opponents. By friends of God, dear and holy Father, we simple people mean, properly speaking, those intellectual and incorporeal beings which surround God. By true servants of God, we mean all those who tirelessly and unremittingly do and have done his will. By worthless servants we mean those who think of themselves as having been granted baptism, but have not faithfully kept the vows they made to God. By those estranged from God and alienated from him, we mean those who are unbelievers or heretics. Finally, the enemies of God are those who have not only evaded and rejected the Lord's commandment themselves, but who also wage bitter war on those who are fulfilling it. Hold on a second. I have to deal with this heater. Gotta turn it off. Hold on. All right. Number 2. Each of the classes mentioned above might well have a special treatise devoted to it. But for simple folk like us, it would not be profitable at this point to enter into such lengthy investigations. Come then, in unquestioning obedience, let us stretch out our unworthy hands to these true servants of God, who devoutly compel us and in their faith constrain us by their commands. Let us write this treatise with a pen taken from their knowledge and dipped in the ink of humility, which is both subdued yet radiant. Then let us apply it to the smooth white paper of their hearts, or rather rest it on the tablets of the Spirit, and let us inscribe the divine words, or rather sow the seeds, and let us begin like this. Number 3. God belongs to Number 3. God belongs to all free beings. He is the life of all, the salvation of all, faithful and unfaithful, just and unjust, pious and impious, passionate and dispassionate, monks and seculars, wise and simple, healthy and sick, young and old, just as the diffusion of light, the sight of the sun, and the changes of the weather are for all alike. For there is no respect of persons with God. 4. The irreligious man is a mortal being with a rational nature, who of his own free will turns his back on life and thinks of his own Maker, the ever-existent, as non-existent. The lawless man is one who holds the law of God after his own depraved fashion, and thinks to combine faith in God with heresy that is directly opposed to him. The Christian is one who imitates Christ in thought, word, and deed, as far as possible for human beings, believing rightly and blamelessly in the Holy Trinity. The lover of God is he who lives in communion with all that is natural and sinless, and as far as he is able, neglects nothing good. The continent man is he who in the midst of temptations, snares, and turmoil, strives with all his might to imitate the ways of him who is free from such. The monk is he who within has The monk is he who within his earthly and soiled body toils towards the rank and state of the incorporeal beings. A monk is he who strictly controls his nature and ceaselessly watches over his senses. A monk is he who keeps his body in chastity, his mouth pure and mind illumined. A monk is a morning soul that both asleep and awake is unceaselessly occupied with the remembrance of death. Withdrawal from the world is voluntary hatred of vaunted material things and denial of nature for the attainment of what is above nature. Number 5. All who have willingly left the things of the world have certainly done so either for the sake of the future kingdom, or because of the multitude of their sins, or for the love of God. If they were not moved by any of these reasons, their withdrawal from the world was unreasonable. But God, who sets our contests, waits to see what the end of our course will be. Number 6. The man who has withdrawn from the world in order to shake off his own burden of sins should imitate those who sit outside the city amongst the tombs, and should not discontinue his hot and fiery streams of tears and voiceless heartfelt groanings until he too sees that Jesus has come to him and rolled away the stone of hardness from his heart, and loosed Lazarus, that is to say, our mind, from the bands of sin, and ordered his attendant angels, loose him from passions, and let him go to blessed dispassion. Otherwise he will have gained nothing. Just going to check on the stream here. Everything's looking good. Awesome. All right, so I need to check just one more thing. Okay. All right, I'll continue. All right, number 7. Those of us who wish to go out to Egypt and to fly from Pharaoh certainly need some Moses as a mediator with God and from God, who, standing between action and contemplation, will raise hands of prayer for us to God, so that guided by him we may cross the sea of sin and rout the Amalek of the passions. That is why those who have surrendered themselves to God deceive themselves if they suppose that they have no need of a director. Those who came out of Europe, those who came out of Egypt had Moses as their guide, and those who fled from Sodom had an angel. The former are like those who are healed of the passions of the soul by the care of physicians. These are they who come out of Egypt. The latter are like those who long to put off the uncleanness of the wretched body. That is why they need a helper, an angel, so to speak, or at least one equal to an angel. For in proportion to the corruption of our wounds, we need a director who is indeed an expert and a physician. Those who aim at ascending with the body to heaven need violence indeed and constant suffering, especially in the early stages of their renunciation, until our pleasure-loving dispositions and unfeeling hearts attain to love of God and chastity by visible sorrow. Hold on a second. A great toil, very great indeed, with much unseen suffering, especially for those who live carelessly, until by simplicity, deep angerlessness, and diligence, we make our mind, which is a greedy kitchen dog addicted to barking, a lover of chastity and watchfulness. But let us who are weak and passionate have the courage to offer our infirmity and natural weakness to Christ with unhesitating faith, and confess it to him, and we shall be certain to obtain his help. We shall be certain to obtain his help, even beyond our merit, if only we unceasingly go right down to the depth of humility. 9. All who enter upon the good fight, which is hard and narrow, but also easy, must realize that they must leap into the fire, if they really expect the celestial fire to dwell in them. Hold on. But let everyone examine himself, and so let him eat the bread of it with its bitter herbs, and let him drink the cup of it with its tears, lest his service lead us to his own judgment. Lest his service lead to his own judgment. If everyone who has been baptized has not been saved, I shall be silent about what follows. 10. Those who enter this contest must renounce all things, despise all things, deride all things, and shake off all things, that they may lay a firm foundation. A good foundation of 3 layers and 3 pillars is innocence, fasting, and temperance. Let all babes in Christ begin with these virtues, taking their model the natural babes. For you never find in them anything sly or deceitful. They have no insatiate appetite, no insatiable stomach, no body on fire. But perhaps as they grow, in proportion as they take more food, their natural passions also increase. 11. To lag in the fight at the very outset of the struggle and thereby to furnish proof of our coming defeat is a very hateful and dangerous thing. A firm beginning will certainly be useful for us when we later grow slack. A soul that is strong at first, but then relaxes, is spurred on by the memory of its former zeal, and in this way new wings are often obtained. I need to make this a little bigger. There we go. 12. When the soul betrays itself and loses the blessed and longed-for fervor, let it carefully investigate the reason for losing this, and let it arm itself with all its longing and zeal against whatever has caused this. For the former fervor can only through the same door. For the former fervor can return only through the same door which it was lost. 13. The man who renounces the world from fear is like burning incense, that begins with fragrance, but ends in smoke. He who leaves the world through hope of reward is like a millstone, that always moves in the same way. But he who withdraws from the world out of love for God has obtained fire at the very outset, and, like fire set to fuel, it soon kindles a larger fire. 14. Some build bricks upon stones, others set pillars on bare ground, and there are some who go a short distance, and, having got their muscles and joints warm, go faster. Whoever can understand, let him understand this allegorical word. 15. Let us eagerly run our course as men called by our God and King, lest, since our time is short, we be found in the day of our death without fruit and perish of hunger. Let us please the Lord as soldiers please their king, because we are required to give an exact account of our service after the campaign. Let us fear the Lord not less than we fear beasts. For I have seen men who are going to steal and were not afraid of God, but, hearing the barking of dogs, they at once turned back. And what the fear of God could not achieve was done by the fear of animals. Let us love God at least as much as we respect our friends. For I have seen people who had offended God and were not in the least perturbed about it. And I have seen how those same people provoked their friends in some trifling matter, and then employed every artifice, every device, every sacrifice, every apology, both personally and through friends and relatives, not sparing gifts, in order to regain their former love. 16. In the beginning of our renunciation, it is certainly with labor and grief that we practice the virtues. But when we have made progress in them, we no longer feel sorrow, or we feel little sorrow. But as soon as our mortal mind is consumed and mastered by our alacrity, we practice them with all joy and eagerness, with love and divine fire. 17. Those who at once from this very outset follow the virtues and fulfill the commandments with joy and alacrity certainly deserve praise. And in the same way, those who spend a long life in asceticism and still find it a weariness to obey the commandments, if they obey them at all, certainly deserve pity. 18. Let us not abhor or condemn the renunciation due merely to circumstances. I have seen men who had fled into exile meet the emperor by accident when he was on tour, and then join his company, enter his palace, and dine with him. I have seen seed casually fall on the earth and bear plenty of thriving fruit, and I have seen the opposite too. I have seen a person come to a hospital with some other motive, but the courtesy and kindness of the physician overcame him, and on being treated with an astringent, he got rid of the darkness that lay on his eyes. Thus, for some, the unintentional was stronger and more sure than what was intentional in others. 19. Let no one, by appealing to the weight and multitude of his sins, say that he is unworthy of the monastic vow, and for love of pleasure disparage himself, excusing himself with excuses in his sins. Where there is much corruption, considerable treatment is needed to draw out all the impurity. The healthy do not go to a hospital. 20. Check again, see if everything's good. All right, nice. All right. Sorry, there's a notification on here that keeps coming up. I'll have to deal with it another time. All right, 20. If an earthly king were to call us and request us to serve in his presence, we should not delay him for other orders. We should not make excuses, but we should leave everything and eagerly go to him. Let us then be on the alert, lest, when the King of Kings and Lord of Lords and God of Gods calls us to this heavenly office, we cry off out of sloth and cowardice, and find ourselves without excuse at the last judgment. It is possible to walk, even when tied with the fetters of worldly affairs and iron cares, but only with difficulty. For even those who have iron chains on their feet can often walk, but they are continually stumbling and getting hurt. An unmarried man who is only tied to the world by business affairs is like one who has fetters on his hands, and therefore when he wishes to enter the monastic life, he has nothing to hinder him. But the married man is like one who is bound hand and foot, and so when he wants to run, he cannot. 21. Some people living carelessly in the world have asked me, we have wives and are beset with social cares, and how can we lead the solitary life? I replied to them, do all the good you can, do not speak evil of anyone, do not steal from anyone, do not lie to anyone, do not be arrogant towards anyone, do not hate anyone, be sure that you go to church, be compassionate to the needy, do not offend anyone, do not wreck another man's domestic happiness, and be content with what your own wives can give you. If you behave in this way, you will not be far from the kingdom of heaven. 22. Let us charge into the good fight with joy and love without being afraid of our enemies. Though unseen themselves, they can look at the face of our soul, and if they see it altered by fear, they take up arms against us all the more fiercely. For the cunning creatures have observed that we are scared. So let us take up arms against them courageously. No one will fight with a resolute fighter. 23. The Lord designedly makes easy the battles of beginners, so that they should not immediately return to the world out. The Lord designedly makes easy the battles of beginners, so that they should not immediately return to the world at the outset. And so rejoice in the Lord always, all servants of his, detecting in this the first sign of the Master's love for us, and a sign that he himself has called us. But when God sees courageous souls, he has often been known to act in this way. He lets them have conflicts from the very beginning in order to crown them the sooner. But the Lord hides the difficulty of this contest from those in the world. For if they were to know, no one would renounce the world. 24. All right, going to do another sound check here. All right, still sounds good. Okay, 24. Offer to Christ the labors of your youth, and in your old age you will rejoice in the wealth of dispassion. What is gathered in youth nourishes and comforts those who are tired out in old age. In our youth, let us labor ardently, and let us run vigilantly, for the hour of death is unknown. We have very evil and dangerous, cunning, unscrupulous foes, who hold fire in their hands, and try to burn the temple of God with the flame that is in it. These foes are strong, they never sleep, they are incorporeal and invisible. Let no one, when he is young, listen to his enemies, the demons, when they say to him, "Do not wear out your flesh, lest you make it sick and weak." For you will scarcely find anyone, especially in the present generation, who is determined to mortify his flesh, although he might deprive himself of many pleasant dishes. The aim of this demon is to make the very outset of our spiritual life lax and negligent, and then make the end correspond to the beginning. 25. Those who have really determined to serve Christ with the help of spiritual fathers and their own self-knowledge will strive before all else to choose a place and a way of life and a habitation and exercises suitable for them. For community life is not for all, on account of greed, and not for all our places are places of solitude, on account of anger. But each will consider what is most suited to his needs. To his needs. A little more water. 26. The whole monastic state consists of 3 specific kinds of establishment, either the retirement and solitude of a spiritual athlete, or living in silence with 1 or 2 others, or settling patiently in a community. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left, but follow the King's highway. Of the 3 ways of life stated above, the second is suitable for many people. For it is said, "Woe unto him who is alone when he falleth." Woe unto him who is alone when he falleth into despondency or lethargy, or laziness, or despair, and hath not another among men to lift him up. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them, said the Lord. 27. So who is a faithful and wise monk? He who has kept his fervor unabated, and to the end of his life has not ceased daily to add fire to fire, fervor to fervor, zeal to zeal, love to love. This is the first step. Let him who has set foot on it not turn back. All right. Step 2, on detachment. Number 1. The man who really loves the Lord, who has made a real effort to find the coming kingdom, who has really begun to be troubled by his sins, who is really mindful of eternal torment and judgment, who really lives in fear of his own departure, will not love, care, or worry about money, or possessions, or parents, or worldly glory, or friends, or brothers, or anything at all on earth, but having shaken off all ties with earthly things, and having stripped himself of all his cares, and having come to hate even his own flesh, and having stripped himself of everything, he will follow Christ without anxiety or hesitation, always looks heavenward, and accepting help from there, according to the word of the holy man. My soul sticks close behind thee. And according to the ever-memorable author who said, I have not wearied of following thee, nor have I desired the day or rest of man, O Lord. Number 2. After our call, which comes from God and not man, we have left all that is mentioned above, and it is a great disgrace for us to worry about anything that cannot help us in the hour of our need, that is to say, the hour of our death. For as the Lord said, this means looking back and not being fit for the kingdom of heaven. Knowing how fickle we novices are, and how easily we turn to the world through visiting or being with worldly people, when someone said to him, Suffer me first to go and bury my father, our Lord replied, Leave the dead to bury their own dead. Number 3. After our renunciation of the world, the demons suggest to us that we should envy those living in the world who are merciful and compassionate, and be sorry for ourselves as deprived of these virtues. The aim of our foes is, by false humility, either to make us return to the world, or, if we remain monks, to plunge us into despair. It is possible to belittle those living in the world out of conceit, and it is also possible to disparage them behind their backs in order to avoid despair and to obtain hope. Number 4. Let us listen to what the Lord said to the young man who had fulfilled nearly all the commandments. One thing thou lackest. Sell what thou hast and give to the poor, and become a beggar who receives alms from others. Number 5. Having resolved to run our race with ardor and fervor, let us consider carefully how the world gave judgment concerning all living in the world, speaking of even those who are alive as dead, when he said to someone, Leave those in the world who are dead, to bury the dead in body. His wealth did not in the least prevent the young man from being baptized. And so it is vain that some say that the Lord commanded him to sell what he had for the sake of baptism. This is more than sufficient to give us the most firm assurance of the surpassing glory of our vow. Number 6. It is worth investigating why those who live in the world and spend their life in vigils, fasts, labors, and hardships, when they withdraw from the world and begin the monastic life, as if at some trial or on the practicing ground. Sorry, I got a little distracted. As if at some trial or on the practicing ground, no longer continue the discipline of their former spurious and sham asceticism. I have seen how in the world they planted many different plants of the virtues, which were watered by vainglory as an underground sewage pipe, and were hoed by ostentation, and for manure were heaped with praise. But when transplanted to a desert soil, inaccessible to people of the world, and so not manured with the foul-smelling water of vanity, they withered at once. For water-loving plants are not such as to produce fruit in hard and arid training fields. 7. The man who has come to hate the world has escaped sorrow, but he who has an attachment to anything visible is not yet delivered from grief. For how is it possible not to be sad at the loss of something we love? We need to have great vigilance in all things. We must give our whole attention to this above everything else. I have seen many people in the world who, by reason of cares, worries, occupations, and vigils, avoided the wild desires of their body. But after entering the monastic life, and in complete freedom from anxiety, they polluted themselves in a pitiful way by the disturbing demands of the body. Hold on a sec again. The music's gone. Let me work on that. Let's see. Gonna make this adjustment. All right. Let me just catch up with that delay and see what happens. Okay, yeah, the music is here. It's that delay that's getting me. All right. Okay, getting back in. All right. But after entering the monastic life and in complete freedom from anxiety, they polluted themselves in a pitiful way by the disturbing demands of the body. Number 8. Let us pay close attention to ourselves, so that we are not deceived into thinking that we are following the straight and narrow way, when in actual fact we are keeping to the wide and broad way. The following will show you what the narrow way means: mortification of the stomach, all-night standing, water in moderation, short rations of bread, the purifying draught of dishonor, sneers, derision, insults, the cutting out of one's own will, patience in annoyances, unmurmuring endurance of scorn, disregard of insults, and the habit, when wronged, of bearing it sturdily, when slandered, of not being indignant, when humiliated, not to be angry, when condemned, to be humble. Blessed are they who follow the way we have just described, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Number 9. No one will enter the heavenly bride chamber wearing a crown unless he makes the first, second, and third renunciation. I mean the renunciation of all business and people and parents, the cutting out of one's will, and the third renunciation of the conceit that dogs obedience. Of the conceit that dogs obedience. Come ye out from among them, and ye be separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean world. For who amongst them has worked any miracles? Who has raised the dead? Who has driven out devils? Not one. All these are the victorious rewards of monks, rewards which the world cannot receive. And if it could, then what is the need of asceticism or solitude? 10. After our renunciation, when the demons inflame our hearts by reminding us of our parents and brethren, then let us arm ourselves against them with prayer, and let us inflame ourselves with the remembrance of the eternal fire, so that by reminding ourselves of this, we may quench the untimely fire of our heart. 11. If anyone thinks he is without attachment to some object, but is grieved at its loss, then he is completely deceiving himself. 12. If young people who are prone to the desires of physical love and to luxurious ways if young people who are prone to the desires of physical love and to luxurious ways wish to enter the monastic life, let them exercise themselves in all fasting and prayer, and persuade themselves to abstain from all luxury and vice, lest their state be worse than the first. This harbor provides safety, but also exposes one to danger. Those who sail the spiritual seas know this, but it is a pitiful sight to behold those who have survived perils at sea suffering shipwreck in harbor. This is the second step. Let those who run the race imitate not Lot's wife, but Lot himself, and flee. All right. Step 3. On exile or pilgrimage. Number 1. Exile means we leave forever everything in our own country that prevents us from reaching the goal of the religious life. Exile means modest manners, wisdom which remains unknown, prudence not recognized as such by most, a hidden life, an invisible intention, unseen meditation, desire for humiliation, longing for hardship, constant determination to love God, abundance of charity, renunciation of vainglory, depth of silence. Number 2. Those who have come to love the Lord are at first unceasingly and greatly disturbed by this thought, as if burning with divine fire. I speak of separation from their own, undertaken by the lovers of perfection, so that they may live a life of hardship and simplicity. But great and praiseworthy as this is, Yet it requires great discretion. For not every kind of exile, carried to extremes, is good. Number 3. If every prophet goes unhonored in his own country, as the Lord says, then let us beware lest our exile should Then let us beware lest our exile should be for us an occasion of vainglory. For exile is separation from everything in order to keep the mind inseparable from God. Exile loves and produces continual weeping. An exile is a fugitive from every attachment to his own people and to strangers. Number 4. In hastening to solitude and exile, do not wait for world-loving souls, because the thief comes unexpectedly. In trying to save the careless and indolent, along with themselves, many perish with them, because in course of time the fire goes out. As soon as the flame is burning within you, run, for you do not know when it will go out and leave you in darkness. Not all of us are required to save others. The divine apostle says, "For each one of us shall give account of himself to God." And again he says, "Thou therefore who teachest another, teachest thou not thyself?" This is like saying, I do not know whether we must all teach others, but teach yourselves at all costs. Number 5. In going into exile, beware of the demon of wandering and of sensual desire, because exile gives him this opportunity. Number 6. Detachment is excellent, but her mother is exile. Having become an exile for the Lord's sake, we should have no ties of affection at all, lest we seem to be roving in order to gratify our passions. Number 7. Have you become an exile from the world? Do not touch the world anymore, because the passions desire nothing better than to return. Eve was exiled from paradise against her will, but the monk is a willing exile from his home. She would have liked the tree of disobedience again, and he would certainly expose himself to frequent danger from relatives according to the flesh. Number 9. Run from places of sin as from the plague, for when fruit is not present, we have no frequent desire to eat it. Number 10. Be on the lookout for this trick and wile of the thieves, for they suggest to us that we need not separate ourselves from people in the world, and maintain that we shall receive a great reward if we can look upon women and still remain continent. We must not believe these suggestions, but rather the opposite. 11. When we have lived a year or two away from our family, and have acquired some piety or contrition or continence, then vain thoughts begin to rise up in us, and urge us to go again to our homeland, for the edification of many, they say, and as an example, and for the profit of those who saw our former lax life. And if we possess the gift of eloquence and some shreds of knowledge, the thought occurs to us that we could be saviors of souls and teachers in the world, that we may waste in the sea what we have gathered so well in the harbor. Let us try to imitate not Lot's wife, but Lot himself. For when a soul turns back to what it has left, like salt, it loses its savor and becomes henceforth useless. It loses its savor and becomes henceforth useless. Run from Egypt without looking back, because the hearts which look back upon it with affection shall not see Jerusalem, the land of tranquility. Those who left their own people in childlike simplicity at the beginning, and have since been completely purified, may profitably return to their former land, perhaps even with the intention, after saving themselves, of saving others too. Yet Moses, who was allowed to see God himself, and was sent by God for the salvation of his own people, met many dangers in Egypt, that is to say, dark nights in the world. 12. It is better to grieve our parents than the Lord. For he has created and saved us, but they have often ruined their loved ones and delivered them to their doom. 13. He is an exile who, having knowledge, sits like one of foreign speech among people of another tongue. 14. It is not from hatred that we separate ourselves from our own people or places, God forbid, but to avoid the harm which might come to us from them. In this, as in everything else, it is Christ who teaches us what is good for us. For it is clear that he often left his parents according to the flesh. And when he was told, "Thy mother and thy brethren are seeking for thee," our good Lord and Master at once showed us an example of dispassionate hatred when he said, "My mother and my brethren are they who do the will of my Father who is in heaven." Number 15. Let him be your father who is able and willing to labor with you in bearing the burden of your sins, and your mother, contrition, which can cleanse you from impurity, and your brother, your comrade who toils and fights side by side with you in your striving toward the heights. Acquire an inseparable wife, the remembrance of death, and let your beloved children be the size of your heart. Make your body your slave, and your friends the holy powers, angels, who can help you at the hour of your death, if they become your friends. This is the generation, family, of those who seek the Lord. 16. Love of God extinguishes our love for our parents. And so he who says that he has both deceives himself. He should listen to him who says, "No man can serve two masters. I have not come, says the Lord, to bring peace on earth." That is, love of parents among sons and brothers who have resolved to serve me, but war and a sword, in order to separate lovers of God from lovers of the world, the material from the spiritual, the proud from the humble. For strife and separation delight the Lord when they spring from love for himself. Look, beware. 17. Look, beware, lest you be exposed to the deluge of sentiment through your attachment to the things of your home, and all that you have drowned in the waters of earthly affection. Do not be moved by the tears of parents or friends, otherwise you will be weeping eternally. When they surround you like bees, or rather wasps, and shed tears over you, do not for one moment hesitate, but sternly fix the eye of your soul on your past actions and your death, that you may ward off one sorrow for another. Our own, or more correctly, those who are not our own, flatteringly promise to do everything to please us, but their aim is to hinder our splendid course, and afterwards to bend us in this way to their own ends. 18. For our solitary life, let us choose places where there are fewer opportunities for comfort and ambition, but more for humility. Otherwise, we shall be fleeting in company with our passions. 19. Hide your noble birth, and do not glory in your distinction, lest you be found to be one thing in word and another in deed. Number 20. No one has gone into exile so nobly as that great patriarch to whom it was said, "Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house." And then he was ordered to go into a foreign and barbarous land. 21. Sometimes the Lord has brought more glory to the man who has gone into exile after the manner of this great patriarch. But even if glory is God-given, yet it is excellent to divert it from oneself with the shield of humility. Number 22. When men or devils praise us for our exile, as for some great success, let us then think of who. Then let us think of him who for our sake was exiled from heaven to earth, and we shall find that throughout all eternity it is impossible for us to make return for this. 23. Attachment either to some particular relative or to strangers is dangerous. Little by little it can entice us back to the world, and completely quench the fire of our contrition. It is impossible to look at the sky with one eye and the earth with another, and it is equally impossible for anyone not to expose his own soul to danger who has not separated himself completely, both in thought and body, from his own relatives and from others. Number 24. By much labor and effort, a good and firm disposition is developed in us. But what is achieved with great labor can be lost in an instant. For evil company doth corrupt good manners, being at once worldly and disorderly. The man who associates with people of the world, or approaches them after his renunciation, will certainly either fall into their traps, or will defile his heart by thinking about them. Or if he is not defiled himself yet by condemning those who are defiled, he too will himself be defiled. Hold on. I'm gonna check and see. Okay, last page. All right. Concerning the dreams that beginners have. Number 25. It is impossible to hide the fact that our mind, which is the organ of knowledge, is extremely imperfect and full of all kinds of ignorance. The palate distinguishes different foods, the hearing discerns thoughts, the sun reveals the weakness of the eyes, and words betray a soul's ignorance. But the law of love is an incentive to attempt things that are beyond our capacity. And so I think, but I do not dogmatize, that after a chapter on exile, or rather in this very chapter, something should be inserted about dreams, so that we may not be in the dark concerning this trickery of our wily foes. Number 26. A dream is a movement of the mind while the body is at rest. A fantasy is an illusion. A fantasy is an illusion of the eyes when the intellect is asleep. A fantasy is an ecstasy of the mind when the body is awake. A fantasy is the appearance of something which does not exist in reality. 27. The reason why we have decided to speak about dreams here is obvious. when we leave our home and relatives for the Lord's sake, and sell ourselves into exile for the love of God, and sell ourselves into exile for the love of God, then the devils try to disturb us with dreams, representing to us that our relatives are either grieving or dying, or are captive for our sake and destitute. But he who believes in dreams is like a person running after his own shadow and trying to catch it. 28. The demons of vainglory prophesy in dreams. Being unscrupulous, they guess the future and foretell it to us. When these visions come true, we are amazed, and we are indeed elated with the thought that we are already near to the gift of foreknowledge. A demon is often a prophet to those who believe him, but he is a liar always to those who despise him. Being a spirit, he sees what is happening in the lower air, and noticing that someone is dying, he foretells it to the more credulous types of people through dreams. But the demons know nothing about the future from foreknowledge, for if they did, then the sorcerers would have also been able to foretell our death. 29. Devils often transform themselves into angels of light and take the form of martyrs, and make it appear to us during sleep that we are in communication with them. Then, when we wake up, they plunge us into unholy joy and conceit. But you can detect their deceit by this very fact. For angels reveal torments, judgments, and separations. And when we wake up, we find that we are trembling and sad. As soon as we begin to believe the devils in dreams, then they make sport of us when we are awake too. He who believes in dreams is completely inexperienced. But he who distrusts all dreams is a wise man. Only believe dreams that foretell torments and judgment for you. But if despair afflicts you, then such dreams are also from devils. This is the third step, which is equal in number to the Trinity. He who has reached it, let him not look to the right hand nor to the left. All right, that concludes today's reading of the Ladder of Divine Ascent by Saint John of Climacus. We covered the first 3 steps today. Possibly we'll keep doing 3 steps at a time. I need to take a look and see if they're all around the same the same length. And if so, yeah, we can keep doing it like that. But yeah, again, thank you for all that came. I hope you have a blessed Pascha in whatever manner that you're going to be able to celebrate. I know these are very tough and confusing times. God bless you all, and have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.